Awesome. Well, I'm pretty fired up. I've been going all around to different meetings the last couple of days, and I'll tell you, there is something happening in California. You guys know that?
Yeah.
Something different. We noticed something very different in this election cycle, so we're excited, and even though we're a little bit tired because of all the meetings, at the same time I have that extra energy, so thank God. And I want to invite Mr. Mark Reed to come on up right now. Let's give him a hand. Mark, why don't you have a seat over here. Now, if you guys can see, we do have Brad Sherman's name on that seat. He was invited. I don't believe he is going to show up tonight, but we did invite him to come out, and I'll ask Mr. Reed a little bit more about that, but that's all right, because we're going to hear some good answers, and we're going to give some good questions from Mr. Reed. So, welcome, Mr. Reed. Yeah, once you turn that on. Now, the first question I want to ask you, man, there's a viral video going around from something that happened in Burbank the other day. I don't know if everybody has seen from the women's meeting. There was a women's league meeting, right, in Burbank?
Yeah, it's a League of Women
Voters, and it is something now. I have friends in other parts of the country that are in Florida, and they actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, isn't that guy Mark Reed in the district that you live in?" I said, "He absolutely is." I said, so they're watching it in Florida, they're watching it in New York. So this is very exciting. How do you feel, Mr. Reed, about your video going viral and some of the things that happened in that meeting?
I was excited about it. I think it was extremely good for it to go viral. You know, that town hall or debate is really a setup because it's outside of the 30th district.
Yeah.
It's right next to Adam Schiff's office. So Brad Sherman controls the message that gets out to the district by not having debates in it. You know, this church wanted to debate, the American Legion Hall wanted to debate, the Batters Women's Organization wanted to debate, the North Valley Health Regional Center wanted to debate, the California Medical Association wanted to debate, 2 synagogues and another church wanted debates with him. They all tried to organize it with the League of Women's Voters because that was one of his qualifications, you know, requirements to do a debate with me. So we set them all up through the league, and he rejected every single one of them and chose to do the one in Burbank. And the one in Burbank has a 70-seat theater. There's only 70 seats in there. And those 70 people were so angry that they drowned out both Adam Schiff and Brad Sherman. They really are upset Americans.
Have you ever seen anything like that in the times that you run?
Never have.
Yeah.
The energy is completely different this time around. It really is different.
Wow. Now, that question was kind of out of left field, but I do have some others. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Todd Coconato. I'm a pastor in a local church over here called Leaves of Healing Tabernacle. And we met Mr. Mark Reed a couple years ago, but have gotten to know him, and you know, he answers our questions, and when we reach out, he gets back to us. So that's a welcome thing, because we live in the district, and we reached out to a lot of the representatives. In fact, my parents are sitting here in the front row. And my mom is a pastor as well, and she was telling me that she actually reached out to Brad Sherman's office several times, and there's been no response. So it's good to have somebody that's responsive and that allows us to get to know him. And so first off the bat, I just wanted to say why I care about this, because we've lived in this community. I've lived in here since 1986, and we've seen a lot of changes in the San Fernando Valley, a lot of changes. And I'm going to speak to the local level, and then we'll ask Mr. Reed some questions on the national level as well and the international level, but I know that you have a heart for this city. So for those that may not know you well, can you just give a brief introduction of yourself and why you're running?
Well, I was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley, actually in Sun Valley, and then my parents moved out to West Hills, graduated from El Camino Real. I'm one of the few stories that everybody hears. I met my wife when I was 11 years old. I gave her a promise ring at 16 years old. We married at 21. We have 3 adult children. We have 10 grandchildren. I was in business management until I was 26 years old, which I thought at that point, if they can do it, I could do it. So I bought my first company at 26. I opened a retail store at 28 years old. I bought out another company at 32 years old. Been the national rep for American Indians for about 15 years, dealing with government issues. I've been on the chairman of several national committees, several local committees. I was on the board of directors of the Screen Actors Guild, recruited by the board of directors of KCET because I can get stuff done across the aisle. I mean, basically the Screen Actors Guild is not a conservative organization. Either is KCET. But because I have the ability to reach across the aisle and get things done, they recruited me to get things done, and I did it. So I have a pretty vast experience, and I'll be able to hit the ground running when I get there.
Yeah. And this is a crucial area to have that across the aisle mentality, because as you know, there's a lot of constituents in this district that aren't conservative, but I've noticed your interaction with them, and I have to say it's admirable, because you're willing to. You want to speak a little bit about that?
Well, this election is not about Republican or Democrat. I think everybody realizes that at this point. This election is about our values. It's about good and evil. It's about what do you want. When you sit down at your kitchen table and you start talking to one another, does the Democrat Party really represent your values? And every time I go out and talk about this, several Democrats will stand up when I get down and they say, you know what, you've spoken to my heart. I'm a solid Democrat, but I'm voting for you. I'm not going to change parties just because of you, but I am voting for you because I think you're going to represent me in what I believe in as an American. And this is what we have to get past. We no longer have to look at Republican or Democrat. We have to look at what is our representative doing for us. And when you look in the district here, in the San Fernando Valley, which I grew up in and I love, ask the average person, what does the federal government do for you? And they'll say nothing. I said, it's not that the federal government can't do something for you, it's that your representative is doing nothing for you. And it's a big difference.
Yeah, that's good. I looked at the main issues for the campaign, both locally and nationally, so we're just going to go through a couple of those questions. But one of the things that came up in Los Angeles, which is shocking, is the increase in the homeless community in Los Angeles. It was a 12% increase, I think, just last year. And the numbers are staggering. They're about 55,000 plus. And, you know, I come from the Midwest when I was a kid, and some cities in Ohio have less than 55,000 people. So when you think of the enormity of the situation just in Los Angeles County alone, you know, what are some of your ideas, Mr. Reed, as far as to fix some of these very, very, you know, crucial, you know, the pastor here actually said they have a food bank, we have a food bank at our church. What are some things that you would like to do to affect this homeless crisis that we have?
Well, let me give you a couple of numbers that will really stagger your mind. It's 55,000 that are head counted in city of Los Angeles. In the county of Los Angeles, taking all the 87 incorporates within the county, there's 120,000 homeless people. Yeah. The faith-based organizations, private organizations, some of the city and the county organizations are doing a great job for the people who want help, the voluntary individuals who want help. But the problem is they're leaving the worst of the worst on the street. The people who have serious mental health care issues or major drug issues. Those people now are starting to kill people, break into houses, home invasion robberies. They're becoming extremely lawless because they know that since 47 was passed, 57 was passed, prison realignment, they're not going to jail. They know that they can do whatever they want to do and they can get away with it. And it's pretty standard anymore. I mean, you watch these homeless people panhandling and they will go after you if you say no or if you make any kind of funny face at them. They'll basically attack you. And they know they can get away with it. Right. They can do the snatch and grabs in the stores because they can steal up to $950 worth of stuff and they leave. And they can do that to several stores in one day. Not just one day occurrence and they get away with it. They can do it to several stores and get away with it. Yeah. So they're expecting $57 billion in the state of California to be lost in retail product. So there's a plan that
number again, just so
$57 billion. And you got to think about this. When you go to the store and you buy yourself a new suit, new shirts, new shoes, you're paying for that product loss. That's why our costs are so high, because we're paying for the crime that's going on.
Yeah, real quick on that. So yes. I was in retail many years, and when I was younger, I noticed in the stores they had security people that would come and apprehend people doing that. I've noticed in recent years they don't apprehend because I think there's new laws. Is that true that there's new laws in place?
Well, because you can steal up to $950 worth of stuff. Basically, your product loss teams, security teams that are in the stores are told just take note of who it is, and we will keep them from coming in. Don't stop them. Because you can call the cops. All the cops are going to do is say, come on into the station and file a report because they don't get arrested. Wow. So essentially the stores know their hands are tied and they're not doing anything. So they're getting away with it. But my plan, you kind of were talking about what was my plan. I have a very detailed plan. It's a 35-page plan on my website. We're suffering from the federal government pulling out of mental health care in the mental health care institutions back in the late 80s. We're seeing the results of that. So my plan is to set up 30-day intake centers to work in conjunction with the nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations to do the voluntary, the people who want help. The people who are the worst of the worst, that's kind of like wave one. You go in, you don't really threaten arrest, but you can enforce the vagrancy laws if you want to. But you give them the opportunity to check themselves into the 30-day intake center. At that point, you're going to do a full medical and mental health assessment of them and find out what are their needs, what is wrong with them. At that same time, you're going to contact their families and find out what is the history of the individual. Also let the family know they're okay and this is where they're at. Yeah. Can you help us understand what's going on with your child? Because we all have kids. We all have significant others that may fall into these categories where something went wrong within them and they become not a burden on society because they have a mental illness going on. So once we figure that out, we can get them to the faith-based, the private organizations, and the county, the city, and the state organizations that have help for them. If they don't fit into those categories, the feds need to start short-term and long-term mental health hospitals. Because you take a patient now and you say, okay, go see your therapist, once a week. So they go see their therapist. They're given all these drugs. What does the drug addict or the mental health care patient do? They go out on the street, they sell those drugs, and they go buy the drugs they want that they've been self-medicating for the last 15 years. So that doesn't work. They have to be in a facility where there's follow-through and follow-up. And I'll share a personal story, okay? And here's how I know it works. My brother was a Vietnam veteran. He came back, he was doing great, he went through law school. He got finally pushed over the edge because of PTSD. He had a beautiful house in Half Moon Bay. He was married. His wife finally divorced him because of the issues that were building up. A year after that, he sold his house and he lived on the streets for 15 years. Until he got the help that he needed from the VA, which my mom had to advocate quite heavily for, okay, until he got the help and the follow-through help from the Veterans Administration, he was going to be living on the streets and die. But his disease progressed to the point where he was talking to 3 people, watching 4 or 5 televisions. I mean, you would look at him and think he was a full-on lunatic. Okay, now, because he got the help, he got the drugs that he needed to balance himself out, he works for the VA. Yeah. He has his own apartment. He's a functional individual within society. These things can help, but we need people who are serious about establishing the programs. The money is there. The feds have allocated the money. The state of California has $8 billion. The city of Los Angeles through H and HHH money have $7 billion. We just need leadership to make the hard decisions, just the hard decisions, and say, you know what, sometimes you have to have a compulsory program. It can't be all voluntary. Otherwise, we're going to continue seeing the things that we see now.
That's right. Good answer. Thank you. Another thing that I want to talk about, which the president has really touted the increase in jobs in the nation. We've seen a major increase. In fact, some say there's more jobs than people that are able to fill the jobs. So this is a good problem to have. And we've seen African American unemployment at the lowest numbers. We've seen Hispanic unemployment, women unemployment. The numbers are pretty amazing since 2016. But in the local area, in the San Fernando Valley, we've seen a lot of jobs leaving. We've seen a lot of companies leaving, and a lot of it is to out of state because of the high taxation in California. That's something that's near and dear to me. I know I've been unemployed before. I've looked for jobs. It's hard. What do you plan to do locally on the local level here in California, District 30?
Well, it's kind of strong-arming the state of California, bringing back federal resources and saying you need to cut this, you need to cut that. It's really the horse trading process of what does the state need, how can I help, how can you help? Because the state of California is unfortunately run by I can't say Democrats, because even though they consider themselves Democrats, they're really progressive left. Because the Democrat right now, yes, the Democrat, the 40-year-old and above Democrat, okay, is really the new Republican. Okay, they believe, they see, they have their eyes wide open of what's happening and how the progressive left has taken over their party. We're going to see the bloodletting here in California. The Democrats are going to start losing to decline to state just like the Republican Party did. So in the state of California, we're the worst, I think it's the second worst state in the union to do business in. I mean, the cost of utilities is 48% higher than any other state for manufacturing. This is driving the businesses away from here. Then if you want to start a business, just look at the red tape. I mean, that's got to get cut all the way through. It's got to get cut.
Those are the things I'll be looking at, is HUD money, the Small Business Administration, and how do we streamline these things to happen. It dives right into the whole aspect of the housing shortage. You hear that all the time, or the cost of housing. To get a tract map approved in the state of California, it's over 6 years. Okay, then you bring the tract map, once it's approved, back to the county that you want to build the track in. It takes another 3 years. Okay? After that, you have to bring it to the city to get the city permits and get that approved. That takes another 2 years. Who wants to invest that amount of money on houses that most people can't afford here in the state of California, because the average tract house now costs $1 million?
Right, agreed. And President Trump just recently came out. Now, you're obviously running for Congress, and so you're in District 30, so you would be going to Washington to vote on these key votes. And he just suggested that he will, again, lower taxes if the House continues to be Republican-led. And so, how would you vote on that, sir?
An absolute yes. The state of California came out and they want to claw these taxes back. They realize the feds are giving the tax breaks. And the state of California is going, wait a minute, how do we claw that money back? So they want to increase taxes. Right. The 12-cent tax, the gas tax, right? It's on the ballot this time to repeal it. Think about how both the Republican and the Democrat caucuses of the state of California failed to bring back the federal DOT money for infrastructure projects. There's $700 billion worth of infrastructure projects that have been identified in the state, but yet they brought $53 million back in 2016. I mean, this is where both parties are screwing up. I mean, it has nothing to do with, like I said, Republican or Democrat. Look at what your representative is doing. Are they working for you? Are they bringing it home for you? Are they bringing back what they're supposed to bring back to the state?
Right. Good. And in line with that, there seems to be two sides, as you said, of even the Republican Party. The president has a pretty aggressive agenda, both at home and abroad. Do you stand with the president?
I stand with the policies of the president, but I wouldn't have a problem challenging something that I didn't think was right. Yeah. That's the one thing that you have to do as a representative, is understand your oversight process. Yes, I like his policies. His policies have been right on board. People will ask me all the time, do you support, President Trump? There's his personality. I'll agree with, everybody, even the Christian community has come out and said he's a flawed man. We're all flawed people. I'm not going to like you 100% of the time, and half of you in here don't like the other half of the time. I've been married for 41 years. For 21 years, my wife has really not liked me. So, I mean, so what can you say? His personality is an East Coast personality. You have a hard time swallowing it at times. But when you take that away and you look strictly at his policies, how are you going to argue that? Like you were bringing up with the economy. In the lowest unemployment rate in 49 years. You have companies now that have to take employees and train them, and they're willing to take people with criminal records now because there's not enough bodies. The Democrats come out and say, well, we need more immigrants in here, so let all the illegals in so we can have more workers. Well, wait a minute. We don't have a lack of bodies. It's a lack of will of businesses to train these bodies and give them the opportunity. They're starting to do that now, and we need to understand that just because somebody has a felony on their record, somebody who's kind of been a wildcat when they were younger, doesn't mean they cannot be productive and join the workforce.
Thank you. Thank you. So as a Christian pastor, obviously an area that's extremely important to me is the pro-life, being pro-life and supporting the babies and not killing them off, as we've seen, I call it the biggest genocide in the history of the world. How do you feel about being pro-life? Are you pro-life? Where do you stand on those issues?
I'm pro-life because I'm really grateful my mom was pro-life.
Just to follow up on that, will you vote pro-life always?
I'll always vote pro-life.
There you go. Well, thank you.
Our Constitution protects the life, and it protects the life of the unborn.
So,
I still have to love the Democrats. Even I can't just wish abortion on Democrats.
So another very kind of an open wound is we just saw the confirmation hearing of Justice Kavanaugh, And it became, as the justice said himself, a circus. Coming fresh out of that, how did you perceive that whole hearing, and what would you do in the Congress of the United States, when it comes to judges?
You watched the debate, right, that I had with my opponent who's not here, and I kind of wonder why he's not here. He said because of the last two appointments to the Supreme Court by President Trump, he thinks we should increase the Supreme Court with 2 more judges with liberal ones. I mean, that's, what kind of mentality is that going on? The Democrats or the progressive left have had judicial advocacy in the Supreme Court for 40 years, almost 50 years now. So they're really upset that now it's more of a constitutional court. You can't say it's a conservative court, it's a constitutional court. Our Constitution, based on the foundation of it, yes, is conservative because it's God-given rights. It's the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution controls the way in which the government is supposed to operate to protect our God-given rights. So we finally have 5 judges that are originalists and believe and understand what the Constitution is all about. The actual consent, the advice and consent hearing was no different than Loretta Hill and Clarence Thomas. It was a high-tech lynching. You had this stellar judge destroyed in the public eye. You had a woman, I honestly believe in myself, watching her and everything else, she's probably had a very traumatic experience in her life. I believe that she has. I don't say that she's a liar. I think she probably has had one. Do I believe that it was Kavanaugh that did it? Absolutely not. I really don't. I believe that the tragedy in America was the Congresswoman out of Palo Alto that Dr. Ford first brought the claim to, failed in her fiduciary responsibility of saying, go back to Maryland, file a police report. Once you file that police report, we'll take you to the FBI. We'll have them do a follow-up on it. If there's any credibility to this, then we will then take it to there. And they had 8 weeks to do this. There was plenty of time to do it. But instead, that was not the intent of the Democrats' desire to stop this appointment. They wanted to weaponize it. Once they weaponized it, what did they do? How many women out here believe that you were assaulted just because of what they did in that hearings? Every woman I talked to, it was a major issue. Because in America, there is a very dark seed. It is assault. It is sexual assault, sexual harassment, date rapes that go on. 1 out of every 3 women in America have some kind of an assault that takes place. 70% of those assaults are not reported. Why? Because of the shame, the belittlement. They think, well, I just won't say a word about it. And this is where my opponent has, how would you say, he has obstructed justice in his own office because his chief of staff, while he was working in the office, has a rape allegation, sexual assault allegation, and sexual harassment allegations against him while he was working in the office. It all came out once he became a state assemblyman because he assaulted a woman in a bathroom in Las Vegas. So then he had to step down from the state assembly seat. So all of this stuff is coming out. He has blocked all the investigations in his office. Is that an obstruction of justice? There's several committees that he's supposed to bring that to in Congress to go ahead and flush it out because it happened. He was a federal employee at the time. He should have brought it there. He should have helped out with the investigation and sent that guy up the river. Because if somebody did that in my office to one of my employees, other employees, I'll tell you right now, I have no allegiance to that. Flat out none. Matt Devobny, yes.
Wow. So along those lines, again, from a faith-based community perspective, one of the things that the president did right when he got in office, and he talked about this during the 2016 campaign, was the Johnson Amendment. And the fact that the church needs to stay out of politics, 501c3, the whole thing. And so that's affected a lot of pastors that I know for years because they've been afraid to speak out politically. Is it constitutional that the church needs to there's a separation between the church and state?
Separation of church and state is not the elimination of church and state. It's that the government is supposed to stay out of the church. It doesn't mean that the church is not supposed to stay out of the government. It's that simple. It's always been, to me, one of the biggest quagmires inside of myself, going to church and seeing the hypocrisy that happens. I know the Ten Commandments. I've also was raised, if you co-sign somebody breaking one of the commandments, you're as guilty as the person that committed the crime. So when a pastor says that you have to put God above politics, but yet you have a representative that believes in abortion and believes in partial birth abortion, doesn't mind murder, thinks that gay and lesbians is a human right issue, there's a hypocrisy that has grown within the churches that are destroying the churches and destroying the morality within the community. And this is where the churches need to really consider, as I like Huckabee's response at the pastor's conference, you need to really consider whether or not you need a 501c3. If that's going to close your mouth at the pulpit, no, you need to open your mouth because you're directing the morality of your congregation. And you need to stand on your 2 feet, and you need to stand up for the Ten Commandments. You need to stand up for your faith and stand strong, because that's the direction that your family is going to go in. That's the legacy.
Yeah, and we have a friend of mine, Malcolm, who's a friend. He actually goes around and talks about the Constitution, and he's an expert on that subject. And speaking of our rights, the First and Second Amendment, two very important issues, and freedom of speech seems to be the definition of that has changed. Now people are saying you can have free speech as long as it's not hate, or there's a lot of words being thrown around in the new PC culture. What would you do going to Washington to protect the First Amendment, first of all, and then the Second Amendment?
First Amendment, you have to realize, is the freedom of thought, not freedom of speech. Your parents teach you the proper use of speech. When I was young, if you use foul language, what happened? You had a bar of ivory soap stuffed in your mouth, and she washed your mouth out, okay, for using foul and filthy language, okay? That, has developed into this PC culture in society. This is called manners. You don't walk into a church and start cussing and swearing and throwing up all kinds of nasty, hateful speech and all. That's just flat out manners. So looking at the First Amendment, is it freedom of speech to go in and assault and condemn somebody and hate? No, it doesn't cover that. It's freedom of thought. And this is where America, the strength of America, is based on diversity of thought, diversity of ideas. And if we don't feel free to be able to come out and share our ideas, share our thoughts without the fear of repercussion. My mouth is dry. I got to get some water here. Got to do a Marco Rubio here. If we are afraid to speak our minds, I mean, you think about it. I'm on several Facebook sites. Okay. How many times have you said something on Facebook and you get assaulted left and right? I mean, just mean attacks, flat out mean attacks. They are chilling your ability to go into your community and say something. So freedom of speech, yeah, it works great for the Democrats, because if you as a conservative go out there and say something, they're going to beat you up. But if we don't care what a Democrat's got to say. It doesn't hold any water anyways. The Second Amendment, you ask about that. The Second Amendment is, to me, it's always been 2 parts, and that's Judge Scalia's definition of the Second Amendment, and that is it's a well-regulated militia for the free and safe for a free and safe state. Okay, that talks about what is happening within the state in itself, and then it's an individual right to bear arms that shall not be infringed. Okay, that's my individual right for my CCWs and to be able to protect myself against the tyranny of a government. It does not give me the right and does not specify the right to carry arms or own arms to protect myself in my house, or to go out and kill animals for food. It's a specific amendment in the Constitution that protects us from the tyranny of a government. Because the first thing that government, through history, the first thing that government does is they take away everybody's guns, then they kill off all the opposition, and that's the end of it. That's history. That's why our founding fathers put the Second Amendment in there. It wasn't about hunting. It wasn't about protecting yourself from some thief coming into your house. It was the protection of the people against the government that's gone rogue. That's all it is. And it should be held, it should be strengthened, it should be acknowledged as just that. And this is why I'm not an NRA member. I'm not a GOA member either. Okay, and it's because of that. I don't think it's a hunting right. I don't think it's a right for the protection of my home. It's my right to protect myself against the government that's gone rogue. Simple, and that's it.
Yeah. Speaking from a faith-based perspective, again, Bill O'Reilly, when he was on Fox, he would often say there's a war on Christmas. But I would say there's an overall attack on religious liberties and freedom, especially under the Obama administration. Do you see that happening in our culture? And if so, how would you take care of that?
Unlike my opponent, yes, there is a full-on assault on Christianity worldwide. If you want to really look at it, look what's happening in Afghanistan. Look what's happening in Syria. Look what's happening in Iraq. Look what's happening in every other country. Coptic Catholics, all Christians are being slaughtered left and right. This is not being talked about. The emboldenedness of that hatred towards Christians, towards Jews. We're watching what happened in Pennsylvania, right? This hatred that's building and being developed is because it's an overall world hatred that's being generated by the lack of acknowledgement of this attack on religion. And to address it, I'll stand up strong and proud. I'm a person of faith. I'm a man of faith, period.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions, and then I want to open up to a couple questions maybe from the audience as well. Okay, there's a caravan that's coming from Honduras right now. It's an elephant in the room. Some people are calling it an October surprise.
It's not an elephant. We didn't organize it. It's a giant donkey coming up this way.
Well, that was my question. I mean, the president had alluded to the fact that he did feel there was some people behind the funding of it. We've seen that there has been, one of the questions I was asking is, where's the food coming from and the water, and but the greater issue is this an attack on our nation? I mean, how do we handle a crisis like this? What would you do?
Well, it's identifying the exact problem and why it exists and what's happening. It's a complete failure of our Congress to reform our immigration laws. The first reform that has to take place, because this wouldn't be happening if we didn't take asylum requests at the border. I mean, that's got to stop right off the bat. The only reason why they're coming is because they can make an application for asylum at the border. 90% of the individuals that are rushing the border do not fit into that category. But because of the organized movement of immigration lawyers, both here in the United States and down south, they're feeding the coyotes down there. I don't mean the animal coyote. I'm talking about the human traffickers down there, $5,000 a head, of smuggling people over here, because if they can get one foot on soil, U.S. soil, they're told what to say, they fill out their application, they get a court date, and they're gone. There's 700,000 unprocessed asylum requests now in the United States of America. So if we stop that right off the bat, that would fix that problem at the border. However, there are legitimate cases of political and religious persecution that takes place that fits into the asylum request, where we have to have legitimate and large embassies in Mexico, Central America, and all throughout South America, to when a person fits that category, they show up at the embassy, they can be protected there, they can be housed there. Once the application is processed, they can be flown right on over here. But there's a multitude of things that can be done, and I've talked about this on a number of occasions, specifically within Hispanic radio. Maybe that's why my opponent's not here. He's afraid to show up and speak to the Hispanic community, because it's a major issue. And I've seen in the debate over in Burbank, Adam Schiff was blaming the Republican administration right now, and I looked at him and said, that's really not right for you to do that. Both Republicans and Democrats have failed the Hispanic community. They've played them like a ping pong ball. Whichever administration's there, bam, they hit them this way, bam, they hit them that way. They never address the issue. Barack Obama had the full control of the House, full control of the Senate. He had the presidency. Why didn't he fix it? And you know why? Because there's lobbyists on both sides of the aisle that want cheap labor. They don't know how to sit down, take the 14 work visa programs from down south, combine them into one, and set up a process to where we can get the seasonal labor over here that we want and we need. And most of these individuals don't want to come and stay in America. They need to come earn money, but they want to go back to their families. They want to go back to their homeland. So why don't we establish a real solid singular work visa program to where the seasonal help can come here? They can work here for the 3 months to 6 months, go back home. We need to start looking at our economic policies with Mexico, with Central America and South America, and reform all of those. Rather than just straight immigration policy, it has to be a work visa policy that is reformed completely as well.
Right. That's great.
I want the wall.
Yeah. Well,
I don't want the visas either.
do you support the wall, Mr. Reed?
The wall is a reaction to the issues of the I got it. Let me answer the question for you. I want it too, but I'm going to give to you why I want the wall, and I understand what you're saying. The reason why I'm for the wall is because now it's become a national security issue. Because it's not just people and residents of South America, Mexico, and Central America coming over here. You have a lot of Syrians, you have a lot of Middle Easterners that are mixed into the bunch, you have a lot of MS-13 and gangs that are coming across the border, you have a lot of human trafficking that's coming across the border. Because the past administrations of the last 40 years have not been serious about protecting our border, going all the way back to Ronald Reagan's days, we need a wall. They need to have an access point. They need to have a solid process point. So yes, I want the wall, but I don't want the wall just because I don't want people coming here. I'm pro-legal immigration. Pro-legal immigration, okay? But the issue right now is that it is a national security issue. We have so much drugs coming across. We have a lot of people who don't like America coming across that we need the wall. So I agree. I'm not against it in any particular way.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. This is my last question, and I'm going to open it up to the church here. All right, now that's my train of thought. The wall. Oh, yeah. So the Congress has the power of the purse.
Yes.
And President Trump has been really good at balancing our trade through multifaceted strategy. He's used some tariffs. He's renegotiated NAFTA. A couple of things. Number one, would you support the president in some of the issues he's trying to do economically with these trade deals?
Absolutely. We've lost the trade war years ago. Congress has given it up. Congress has had an unbalanced trade policy for the longest period of time. I am really happy and proud that we finally have an administration and a president that said no more. And basically think about it in yourself. If you take it personal, right back to your own home, you're having trade with your next door neighbor. Okay, you send over $100 to your next door neighbor and he sends you back $1. And you do this for 10 years. He's going to have a mansion, you're going to be living in a poorhouse. Okay? This is what we're doing with our neighbors. Think about it, $58 billion trade imbalance just with Mexico. We have over $100 billion trade imbalance with Canada. We have a $800 billion trade imbalance with China. And they steal the intellectual property from here all the time. You look at this throughout the world. This is why they're upset with this president wanting fair and balanced trade of no tariffs, because we've been the cash piggy bank for all of these other countries. They're making a lot of money off of us. Somebody said it was unfair for us to throw Canada out of the NAFTA, the new NAFTA agreement, right? They had 181% tariff on dairy products from here to there. Think about it, 181% tariff, okay? Japan, they send all of their stuff over here, the crotch rockets, motorcycles. Yeah. If Harley Davidson wants to send a motorcycle over there, it was a 200% tariff. So if a Harley here costs $30,000, okay, it's $90,000 over there. How many Harleys do you think the Japanese are driving around? None. Yeah.
Right, and the second part of that, just because I know as I get ready to go down, veterans, I know they're near and dear to your heart, they're near and dear to my heart. We thank them for their service, and we want to make sure that the VA, is taken care of, as well as our military. So as I get ready to go down, can you just speak to the military and how you would fund the military and things like that?
Absolutely. The military is dear and near to my heart because my family is all military. I have 2 cousins that are buried in the battleship Arizona. I have a brother that's buried over here in West Los Angeles, a brother that's buried over here in Hawaii. 4 of my 6 brothers served in Vietnam. My father is the lieutenant commander of the United States Navy. My oldest brother that I talked about that was on the streets for 15 years is a lieutenant. I look at what's happening. More can be done. President Trump is on the right direction, but I still think more needs to be done, without a doubt. But specifically here in the district, we have the Sepulveda VA. That is the last of one of the 3 VAs in the valley. He wants to close it. Brad has done so many illegal things pertaining to that facility, it's mind-boggling. But right now, they have an emergency room. It's closed down. They don't utilize it. They expect all the veterans to go from Palmdale, Lancaster area, the Antelope Valley, the San Fernando Valley, to make that trek over the Sepulveda Pass to get emergency services. If they want the choice service, you have to apply for it and beg for it. Our veterans don't have to beg for anything. They've already earned it, flat out. They've earned it, okay? They have surgical rooms in that Sepulveda VA. They're not utilized either. They have a mental health care program there that they used to bring the interns, mental health care interns graduating. They stopped that program. They have 3 psychologists there that are on staff. They're not going to hire anymore. They have 4,500 to 6,000 patients, 3 psychologists. And you wonder why veterans are committing suicide every 22 minutes. Either we're going to get serious about giving the services and benefits our veterans have earned, or we're not. And as far as I'm concerned, yes, I'll do whatever I can on the national scope, and I'll tell you right now, I'm going to get out there to the Sepulveda VA, I'm going to polish it off, I'm going to buff it up, and it's going to be the shining city at the top of the hill for the San Fernando Valley, so everybody in this valley can remember that in 1940, when this valley was established, it was established by veterans and their families because of coming home from World War II. This is what this valley stands for. There's no questions about it.
Yeah, that's true. Great answer. All right, so and I have a couple more questions, but I wanted to give you guys a chance. So if you raise your hands, and I think you're the first one.
Right. Todd, while you're doing that, without even asking for it, I received the national Gulf War and Vietnam Veterans Coalition's endorsement, without even asking for it, because they've looked up my positions, they looked up where I stand on all of the issues, on the national security issues and the veterans issues. I received it in the mail, and they said they were very proud to endorse me.
Very good, very good. And what is your question?
Okay, my question is that it's going to be a tough one because
I know you.
A friend of mine, I don't want to give a name, but he thinks that Trump, the only way you guys are going to get that wall up, you have to make a deal with Mexico, you have to make a deal with all these countries to give amnesty to the dreamers, to give the amnesty to all the ones we have in this country so that we can have that. And now more will still pour in. Can you answer my question? Are you guys going to be voting for amnesty if you're voted in, the Republicans?
President Ronald Reagan made a deal with Congress then. They gave amnesty. This is why that's a big trigger word, amnesty, amnesty. We're not going to do amnesty. Yes, I want border security first. I don't have a problem with giving teenagers that have been here and gone to school, have been productive individuals within society, residency. That's not amnesty. They came here on their own, yes, illegally. They've proven themselves. I'm not saying they're getting citizenship right off the bat, but they can get residency right off the bat and go and apply for citizenship. If they have committed a crime, if they have been a burden on the welfare systems, no, send them on back home. I don't have a problem with that either. Okay.
What about the 40 million illegals that are here and the dreamers?
I'm
If you make an exception, you're going to have the rest of the people coming.
I want border security. I want borders.
You got to enforce the law.
I understand what you want, but
You don't want the visa, we
you
don't
can
want
you can
the
stand
laws
on
can be enforced.
you can stand on that position all day long, but you have 435 individuals in Congress that you've got to get an idea passed. Okay, it's.
We don't want the amnesty. That's
I understand you don't. I understand that you don't want the amnesty, but.
He's a veteran who feels very strongly against all this. He wants the law, the immigration laws to be enforced. And that's the way it should be. No compromise.
I understand what you want. I think I've answered that.
So President Trump said that unless Honduras and a lot of the other Central American countries he would cut off aid if they don't stop the caravan. From reports that's coming in, I've seen on the news, a lot of these people from the caravan are saying the reason they're leaving is because of the drug violence. But is there anything that Honduras and the other Central American countries can really do to stop the drug violence, which is probably the main reason why a lot of people are trying to come to the U.S.?
Yeah, absolutely. Stopping the aid is number one. Neighboring countries should be the first ones to give asylum to the country that is having the problems. Okay, so if you're in Honduras, the neighboring country that you would go to, you ask them, can I stay here? That's the first country. You don't say, I'm having a problem way down in Brazil. Well, I'm going to trek up to America and I'm going to go there. No. If you're having a problem there, you go to the neighboring country where it's stable. Same thing with Venezuela. It's not the answer, and it's not an asylum request of these countries having drug problems. This is why you take the brain drain away and stop telling these countries, send your people here, we're going to educate them, and we're going to give them a green card once they get educated. They need to go back to their country and straighten their countries out. Central America, Mexico, and South America are beautiful territories. I know people that live down there. The corruption is unbelievable. They have the ability to straighten out their corruption. We should be able to support those economic policies that will straighten out the corruption.
Right, they may have the capability, but do they have the will?
That's up to them. That's up to them. People will have the will. America is the greatest country in the world. We're the financial empire and the leader of the world. Until we stand on the right thing morally with those countries and give them the direction and give them the assistance to stand on the right and go in the right direction, they won't do it. So we have to do that. That's all part of what the wall will bring into alignment, is stopping the massive amount of drugs that come across here. We also need to, and I've said this, and President Trump has finally said it as well, I think international drug smugglers, it should be at the death penalty. You caravan, 100,000 tons of cocaine or fentanyl into this country, you know exactly what you're doing. You're killing people. So straightforward, we catch you.
That's what Indonesia does. Indonesia's policy.
I understand that.
You smuggle drugs in, you get the death penalty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mark,
Yes.
I have a quick question for you because you've been on my show before, which has been kind of cool. You've made your point that you really support the president's agenda. But in this LA Times article, I asked you this before we got in, but I got the more quoting and more exact. So you stated that Trump was arrogant, brash, bold, and nasty. And then when you were asked about Trump's proposal to build the border wall with Mexico and some Muslims from a Muslim ban, okay, right? And you did you agree with it essentially? You responded to this great. Your allegiance is to this great nation, not a political party. And you did not, at the time in 2016, endorse the president. My question is if you did not support the president then, how do I know you support the president now?
I still stand on exactly what I said. I think he's a bold, brash, arrogant individual. I did not hire a cheerleader. I hired an individual to run this country. Okay, and in order for a person to stand up to the press, to stand up to all the opposition he's standing up to, this guy has to be as tough as nails. So yeah.
But you didn't endorse him. That's the question. Why would
I wasn't asked to endorse him at the time. They asked me.
That's what the crowd was wanting. Do you endorse
No,
him?
the crowd wanted it.
Shouted at you. Saying, do you endorse him, yes or no? Do you support him, yes or no? And you did not answer. So my question is why do you endorse? Did you support the president?
Of course, I support his policies, 1,000%.
So that means did you vote for him?
Of course, I voted for him.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clear up. That's all.
Well, that's clear. I think I've been clear. I support his policies 1,000%. I mean, that's it. His policies. Whether I support him as a person, his flaws, I've been very clear about that all along. He's an individual that's very hard to stomach on occasions, and I've always been clear. People love to take my stuff out of context, constantly out of context, okay? And very clearly, I support the policies the President of the United States is putting forward. We have an economy that's booming. He's brought $10 trillion back to the GDP. We have a 4% plus quarterly growth in our GDP. We have the lowest unemployment rate in 49 years, the lowest unemployment rate in all ethnic groups, including women, in 46 years. What more do you want policy-wise? We have strong, foreign policies at this point, where trade negotiations are being balanced out. What more do you want? You want a fluff cake? Let's bring Barack Obama back in. Okay, you want another fluff cake? You want to bring George Bush back in. You want another fluff cake? Let's bring Clinton back in. They want another fluff cake? Let's bring George Bush Sr. back in. We have somebody in there that has 4 Marine generals in the office. I've got somebody in the office finally that understands how to kick butt and get stuff done, regardless of how much he's being attacked. This is being very straightforward. I don't like my words being taken out of context because there's two respects you can have for a person. You can have a respect for what a person gets done, and you can have a respect for the person himself. I don't know Donald Trump personally. I really don't. I've never met him. I've never sat in the same room with him. There are people who are close to him that admire him. They think he's the greatest guy in the world. I have never met the guy. Based on some of his public comments, his public statements, his public behavior, that's something I wouldn't tolerate in my own house. So yes, he's bold, he's brash, he's arrogant. Yahoo, I love it. Okay? He knows how to get stuff done. His policies are right on point.
But you're worried about the border wall, though. That's the main question. Do you support the border wall?
I think I've answered that. I said yes, I support the border wall, and I told you why I support the border wall.
Yeah. And I just want to remind everybody too that Brad Sherman actually wrote the articles of impeachment for the president. So I think it'd be pretty big contrast there.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
I didn't mean to come on so strong. And all of these other things that we're going to do, like where they can apply it from their own country and stuff, until that border is secured, it will not stop. They'll just go around that thing while they're waiting and stuff. Reagan got had. He agreed, and the other end of the deal never happened. We're so tired of hearing the promises and nothing gets done. As I stand here, there's only two people I trust in government, Mike Pence and Donald Trump. Those are the only two people that I trust. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, but I'm going to do a Reagan, trust but verify. I'm going to watch what you do. I want the wall done first. We secure that border, then we can start some sort of plan to bring people in. And I like Trump's idea about Australians' system, where you come in through merit. The ones we need, the ones that are going to contribute to the United States of America.
All right.
My mom taught me to trust only two entities, God and my wife.
Remember what Franklin Graham said when Trump spoke, that when he was sworn in, and Franklin Graham and Billy Graham were big names. When Donald Trump stepped down from the podium, Franklin Graham walked up and he said, because when Trump took the podium, it started to rain, and then it stopped. And when Franklin Graham took the podium, he said, Mr. President, rain is the sign of God's blessing. Many men are bashed like Donald Trump. Vince Lombardi would have loved Trump. Steve Jobs was a tyrant, and look at what he built. Bill Gates, they claim the same way. For some reason, sometimes that style seems to work. And I love Trump because we're so sick and tired of the pom-poms, as Lee Iacocca used to say. The pom-poms come out, and then you never hear another word again after they're elected. This guy's a bulldozer, and he's going in, and he's getting stuff done. And I am so grateful that a man that rich, which could go do anything he wants, buy islands, buy anything he wants. And what he said, that the whole purpose of taking this job was to give back to the United States of America for what he received in America. And as far as today still goes, Mike Pence and Donald Trump are the only politicians I trust. Let's walk the talk.
$120,000 when he came in.
Hi, we want to make sure that there's no more illegal aliens coming in the United States. So I want to know, what's your idea about just, if there's more coming in, why can't we just throw them out automatically and have them go to a line and come in legally? And I also want to know what you feel about federal government employees and not taking away their rights. Two different questions, sir.
I've answered the illegal immigration issues, I think, pretty solidly. We need to reform the immigration policy. We need to stop taking asylum requests at the border, because all we're doing is feeding the illegal human trafficking that's taking place. That has to be done. You have to do things with compassion, and you have to do things with honor. Using the terminology of taking individuals, illegal immigrants or illegal aliens, undocumented, whatever you want, it doesn't make any difference. Saying the words, I'm going to take them and throw them back. You have to understand that America has a strong leadership position of dealing with the economic policies in Central America, South America, Mexico, in building an economic infrastructure. We have a beautiful relationship with Canada. We're not worried about Canadians running in here, are we? My family's Canadian. Okay, I'm not worried about them coming in here. The reason why people are leaving Honduras, Nicaragua, Brazil, Central America, South America, Mexico is for one reason: economic prosperity here in America. That's it. So we need to address that problem, number one. Second one, yes, enforcing immigration laws, without a doubt. That's all that needs to be really done. Building the border wall is national security issues at this point. We need to do that as well. How are we going to deal with the estimate 30 million illegal aliens in this country? You want to pin all of illegal immigration, okay, on South America and Mexico and Central America. 60% of all illegal aliens in this country are visa overstays from every other country on the face of the earth. Okay, but wait a minute, that is a fact. 60% of all illegal aliens, as you're putting them, okay, are from other countries, from visa overstay. Okay, so understand that fact right off the bat. The immigration reform and policy reform addresses visas, it addresses our neighbors, it addresses the whole thing. The border wall is a national security issue anymore. It's about drugs, it's about guns, it's about human trafficking, it's about a whole array of things that are going on. How do we solve it? If you have a bunch of people who continually want to get in for one specific reason, you better fix that one reason. It's not just a wall, okay? So we have to address all of it, not just one aspect of it. And I'm all for all of it.
How about the second question, the federal employees? I don't want you
What about the federal employees? I think 60% of them should be sent home. What's that?
With the Republican, I don't want to shut down federal government. I'm sorry, it seems like there should be a better way. They have come by with shutdowns. So I want to feel what you feel about shutdowns, because I like to be able to, when I'm working, I like to be able to get paid.
Yeah, but you don't want to get paid working for nothing.
Yeah.
What do you do for the federal government, if I can ask?
Social Security Administration.
Okay, Social Security Administration. When the government is shut down, on the couple of occasions that it's shut down, did you get paid retro?
Yeah, eventually, but I didn't like the fact that I was working part of the time. I had to get a loan because I couldn't afford to pay for it right away, so I had to get a loan and pay them back. So it wasn't that simple.
Yeah, but she wants to work.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Is pertaining to the federal government overall, when they have government shutdowns, about 70% of the workforce is considered non-essential. The government is too big at this point. The private sector can do what the government does far better for half the price. The federal government is too big. No, I understand what that's why I asked her right off the bat, what does she do for the federal government? Social Security is a needed employee. I understand that. I understand that. You are one of the essential employees when you're dealing with Social Security. So I'm sure that you weren't sent home. But there's a whole bunch of them in the EPA, the Labor Management Relationship, the Relations Board. There's all kinds of different bureaus that were sent home because they're non-essential to keep the federal government working. Okay, those people we need to really look at and say, can we privatize it? Can we let the public run them? I say, yeah, why not? The federal government is just too big at this point.
Hi Mark, thank you very much for coming to the town hall. Mark, I've been here for 9.5 years, and one of the things that has really struck me is the overreach of the federal government, the increased power of the federal government, even in the time that I've been here, especially in terms of healthcare which they have no responsibility for at all,
Yeah.
and education, which they also have no responsibility for at all, as per the 10th Amendment. It seems to me that the whole structure of government has been inversed, such that you have a massive federal government, a smaller state government, and we the people have less power. That was never the intent of the Founding Fathers. What's your position on those things?
Well, I was just getting into that, the size of the federal government and how there's so many bureaus and bureaucrats, unelected, unaccountable individuals making policy for us. And I believe it was 2016, there was 78,000 pages of law that was passed by bureaus and bureaucrats that did not have to go through the federal Congress process. Congress only passed 14,000 pages of law. See, and this is the problem that we have in America right now, and Ben Sass, in his opening statement to the Kavanaugh hearing, spelled it out perfectly, and that is Congress and the Senate has usurped the responsibility of their jobs to bureaus and bureaucrats, so they're not being held accountable for something that goes awry. Okay, and then at the end, the closing statement of Senator Collins wrapped it up perfectly of what is the responsibility of these committees? It's to run the government. So I get approached all the time, will you support term limits? Yes, if we cut the government by 60%, I can support term limits, but right now a congressman gets elected to go to Washington, D.C. to represent us. It takes that person 2 to 3 cycles to figure out how to get something done, if they're even willing to get something done. This is the problem in the government. And when I was talking about non-essential employees, there's so many bureaus and bureaucrats that are wasting our money that it's unbelievable. We need to bring it right back to the public sector and allow the communities to run things once again. And I think that answers your question quite well.
Well, would you look to pushing for an amendment to the election of senators? See, the 17th Amendment took away the power of the state to appoint senators, and it gave it to the people to elect the senators. And what's essentially happening is exactly what you said. A congressman gets elected, he's got 2 years. The first year, he's learning the job. The second year, he's looking over the shoulder, working out how he's going to get elected for the next 2 years. Whereas a senator has 6 years. And they've become the pseudo-representative of the people because they are now elected by the people as per the 17th Amendment. I see that as a major problem. On the other note, would you promise me that you will never refer to this country as a democracy, please?
It's a republic. It's a constitutional republic. It's not, we practice a democracy. We have an ability to overthrow that as well. And as pertaining to the senators, the elected process of a senator I like, only in their aspect I would hate to see in the state of California continually, appointing progressive lefts. Can you imagine De Leon being appointed as a senator of the state of California? Yeah, that's the jungle primary has really messed that up as well in the state of California, is because one party is running the whole show anymore. This is where people have to come out and vote. This election is not about Republican or Democrat. It's about good and evil. Yeah. It realistically is about good and evil. So we got to stop. We got to get out of the mindset that it's Republican Democrat, because it's not Republican and Democrat. Nobody that's graduating school today, if you ask them as a 21-year-old or 22-year-old, try it one day. Walk out and ask a kid, anybody under 30 years old, what is the platform of the Democrat Party? Oh, I don't know. Ask them, what's the platform of the Republican Party? I don't know. What do you think the difference is? Well, the Democrats want to give me everything and the Republicans want to take it away. And I want free stuff. They have no clue what these two parties stand for. And this goes right into furthering of the divide in America, is they have no clue what the Republican Party or the Democrat Party stands for. And this is where, this is why I said, look, I'm a constitutionalist. I'm a conservative. I'm a Republican because I was born in a Republican family. So I signed up as a Republican when I was 18 years old, no different than anybody else in this room, that when you became 18 years old, you were raised in a Democrat family, you signed up as a Democrat. You had no idea what a Democrat was. But my mom and dad are a Democrat, so I'm going to sign up as a Democrat. My family is Republican, so I'm signed up as a Republican. That's been the mode of this country for so long, and because of high school's complete lack of teaching civics and history, our kids no longer know what their civic responsibility is. And the civic responsibility is a very simple one. I don't go into the ballot box and just mark, Republican. Who is this person? I want to know who this person is. I think the Republican leadership in the state of California has completely failed, and this is why we have a progressive left state, because the Republican Party has failed. The Democrats have usurped their authority over to this progressive left movement because they're in control of the 5th largest economy in the world. There's so much money here that it's unbelievable. But yet in the state of California, it is the exact antithesis of what the Democrat Party supposedly is against, and that is the income divide. You have multi-billionaires in the state of California, and we have the highest population of poor. We have 1/10 of the population of America in California, but yet we have 48% of welfare recipients here. 1 out of every 4 people in California live under the poverty level. What does that tell you? This is a Democrat-run state, and they, on top of it, doubling down on their mythology, right? Gavin Newsom, I'm going to give health care to all illegal aliens. I'm going to give this, I'm going to give that, I'm going to give... Who's going to pay for it? Then you have the Silicon Valley with all the massive progressive liberals in Silicon Valley running our elections at this point through Apple, through Facebook, through Twitter, through Google. They're controlling the message constantly. The state of California is on a fast track right over the ditch at this point because of a progressive left, not Democrat, progressive left movement. And we have to understand that it is extremely dangerous of what's going on in the state of California. And Democrats are starting to see that. There's a gentleman in the audience, he walked up to me right outside on the street and says, "Hi Mark, I'm a Democrat and I'm voting for you." Because he understands what's going on, that this is not a Democrat-Republican issue anymore. This is my civil rights. This is my rights and freedom as Americans. And this is what this election is about. Either we're going to stand up for what America is, or we're not. We're going to lose it. And as Ronald Reagan very eloquently said once, freedom is not passed down from generation to generation. It's fought for. It's earned. Right now we're at the brink of losing it here in California. I don't think nationally, because we finally have somebody that's got some pants on in the White House. I think we had the first woman president, the last administration.
All right, I know we got to be sensitive of time here, so we're just going to have 2 more questions, and then I know Mr. Ray usually hangs around for a couple minutes.
Yes.
If you have a question, we also want to pray for him, because we are in a church and we want to pray for him tonight. So we have one more question here.
Mark, how do you propose to change the legislative process so that we don't end up with bills that are this high, into which the lawmakers have very little input, their staffs, lobbyists, whoever is writing them, the people in Congress don't have a chance to read them, and the people are deprived of their right of review of this legislation. Obamacare is an excellent example. How do you propose, is there a way to change that, and if so, how do you propose to change that?
I think an amendment needs to be brought forth, because originally it was, I believe, a 72-hour public exposure of all pieces of legislation for the public review. That was based way back when the largest bill might have been 20 pages. So you look at that and you say, okay, we get a 3-day public review of every piece of legislation for every 200 pages, maybe 300 pages, or we can go at extraordinary to 400 pages. That's 3 days. So if you have a piece of legislation like the ACA, which was 2,700 pages, you dissect that and it ended up with about a month of public review. So this way the public has a solid input. You have all these different organizations that will tear it apart and know exactly what's in it, rather than this 3-day process which shoves it through and Nancy Pelosi comes out and says we have to vote for it and then find out what's in it. No, the public has how would you say, a right to know exactly what are in these bills. We have a right to allow public exposure so we can contact our representatives and say hell no if we don't like it, or hell yes if we like it. But it has to be based on what is the number of pages that are in that bill. I don't.
You go back to that 20-page or 400-page bill.
No, you give a certain number of days for public review based on 300 pages. Let's say 300 pages, 3 days. You have a 900-page bill, it's 9 days. You have an 1,800-page bill, that's 18 days. Okay, it goes up each time. You're adding that a number based on how many pages. Even if it's 301 pages, it goes to the 9 days or 6 days. You know, you're giving that public review because then it gets there. They can't even vote on it until it goes through the public review process. So I would sponsor a bill that would do something like that because we have a right to know exactly what's in these bills and prior to them voting on it.
All right, last question here.
Mark, Newt Gingrich had an idea about if you come here by no fault of your own, you're young, you're a dreamer, that like Israel, you have to spend 2 years in the armed forces, and then you get legal status with the hope of getting citizenship, and you be screened for felonies and all that stuff like that. And I think a lot of people would grasp at that. So you get legal status with the hope or the intent of a future legal citizenship.
Yes, Newt Gingrich actually had a pretty comprehensive immigration plan that was really turned down quite heavily. I thought it was actually an excellent program. He had different panels for every area within the United States of America to be able to process the individuals that are here to determine whether or not they're felons, whether or not they've been a burden on society. And if they're not, then they will get legal status, which is residency, and they can apply at that point for citizenship. I don't have an issue with that. What I have an issue with, very simply, is until we get border security, we're no longer going to make deals on the rest of the issue. Ronald Reagan and the Republican Party should have figured that one out a long time ago, because you can have these things appropriated or put into the budget, but until the funds are appropriated, it doesn't happen. And that's how we got basically shafted in Ronald Reagan's era of time, because Congress reneged on their deal. So this time around, it has to be border security first, and then we're going to make the deals for everything else afterwards. So until we get the $25 billion to build the wall for border security, then we'll start dealing with unraveling the onion of immigration reform. How that's going to look, I don't know yet, because they have not had the political will to put it forward. I don't think it should be just one giant reform. I think we need to address each piece. You know, you address the the asylum request, you address the chain migration, you address the lottery issues, you address merit-based immigration, you address every single issue one piece at a time, so this way it will make it through the Senate and the House. They keep trying to do it all in one big thing, and they get into these battles because this side doesn't like this piece, this side doesn't like that piece. I'll negotiate it. Send one piece at a time through. You can do 10 pieces in 1 year. It's going to be far better than what we've gotten in the last 40 years, which is nothing. I mean, if you do history, you'll realize going all the way back to World War I, you had Operation Wetback then. This is how bad the immigration policies have been. They had a wetback operation then of kicking out all the illegals in order for the returning veterans of World War I to have jobs. It was still called Operation Wetback in World War II. The same thing. So the immigration problem is not a new problem. It is a multi-leveled problem. It's a multi-leveled problem in regards to service-orientated labor force, seasonal labor force. We need to take, like I said, take the 14 work visa programs, combine them into one, make it a very viable and workable one. That will alleviate a lot of the problems. Then you look at the rest of the immigration problems. We need to do it one piece at a time. One of the biggest pieces we have to do is a complete overhaul of the visa program. Because the visa program, like I said earlier, everybody wants to sit here and think that illegal aliens are all from the South. They're not all from the South. They get in here legally. Every one of those bombers that were in 9/11 were visas. Every single one of them were visas. The guy down here in San Bernardino that shot up the county building was over here. They brought his wife over on visas. We have to look at the entire thing. But I'm not willing to negotiate for one thing until we secure our border. That has to be, because that gets into a human rights violation of individuals coming from down south who are paying somebody $5,000 to $7,000 to smuggle them over here. Parents are giving their daughters the morning after pill because 1 out of every 3 women coming from down south are raped, viciously raped. You look at the bordellos all along the border. They come there, they're indentured slaves for 5 years. They're being raped. I mean, this is the brutality of what is happening because of immigration non-reform. We need to get serious about it. We need to get serious about it, and we need to get serious about it because both Republicans and Democrats haven't gotten serious. And the biggest distaste and disdain came from Ronald Reagan when he gave amnesty on the caveat that they were going to secure the border. The Democrats allocated the money. They wanted the border wall then. They said it was fine then they reneged on it. So God forbid we didn't learn from that one. We need to secure our border because there's stuff that's coming up from down south that's not Hondurans, Nicaraguans, Mexicans, Central Americans, South Americans that are really dangerous to us in respect to what is the non-Hispanics that are coming through, because these are ISIS, the gang members and so forth. So we have to look at it with a certain amount of compassion and just don't throw out words that I'm going to round them all up and throw them out. That's inhumane in all kinds of ways. That doesn't work. That will never work. We have to address it with border security first, take each piece of the immigration policy and make it work. That's it. But I want to thank everybody for showing up.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And I know there's a couple more people that this gentleman's had his hand. Can we ask just one last question for him?
I'm Hispanic, so I really, you know, in my...
I feel that I'm real American. Really.
Yes.
I get a lot. Guys, based on what's happened in the country, the way Democrats want to abolish ICE, the way they want to infiltrate the country with illegal immigrants in order to get control of the votes. On many different other occasions, but Obama tried to kill actually Israel, and thanks God that God sent Trump to recover Israel and survive Jewish population. I have...
well, thank God that Donald Trump moved our embassy to Jerusalem, right?
By the embassy to Jerusalem. So the record stands very clear. So as immigrant from millions of immigrants, when I came 40 years ago from Soviets, okay, we came as illegal immigrants based on the constitution of this country. The way I see it, the way this is fake media, I'm from construction business from actually day one, small company owner. I had factory in Mexico, I was a factory, I personally got those. I was on the 7 major times ups and down in my business. Yeah, so with all this going on, that they, Democrats betraying Constitution, they completely became socialists. It's no more Democrats. They are real, I call them even neo-Nazi socialists after I watched Dennis Show's movie, Death of the Nation. So my question is, as immigrant, as many other millions, why we cannot sue Democrat with a class action because they betray our right as immigrants to come based on the constitution of this country. Also, when I see fake media or reporters, why they don't have license like we have in construction industry, why they don't cover liability insurance. So anytime they lie or whatever, we can class action to sue them like CNN, NBC, or other media. Thank you.
Because of the First Amendment, you can't sue the press for being a liar. You just stop watching them and you stop buying their garbage. Okay, and the same thing in the power of the ballot box. You can't sue a sovereign nation because you've got a liar that's your representative. It's incumbent upon all of you to get out there and change the vote. Get people to the ballot box and change the vote. That is the way the Constitution is set. Yes, I don't like what's going on. Yes, I understand the buying and selling of votes. I understand what goes on between the Republicans and Democrats. I also believe that both sides are just as corrupt as each other. There's no questions about that. But the power of the people in the district to come out, okay, and vote is what has to take place. We can no longer accept the old cliche, well, I'm a Republican, I'm just going to vote straight Republican. Oh, I'm a Democrat, I'm going to vote straight Democrat. That doesn't work anymore. To me, it doesn't work anymore. I think everybody should be declined to state. You get up and you sell yourself the best possible policies and practices and values that you have. And it's incumbent upon the incumbents, like this guy over here that's, oh, hi Brad, that's not here. He should be here. 7 different major organizations wanted debates with him. He is shutting your voice down, completely down. He's not giving you an opportunity to hold himself accountable. Do you know where he is right now? He's in Washington, D.C. at his house. He doesn't live in the district. He does not live in the district. He could care less about this district. He lives in Washington, D.C. He's back in D.C. right now. Okay, he had the opportunity. You know what he gave his time to? He's going to high schools and indoctrinating the 12th grade of his in the 12th. And I've received so many letters and emails from parents of Catholic schools and Christian schools that are upset that this guy is being allowed into the 12th grade class to basically expose the liberal left agenda to the students of a Catholic school or a Christian school that don't believe the way he believes. They're mad. They're really upset about it. Why would this school that they're spending all kinds of money would allow this person in there without allowing the other side? Now, we shut down a couple of them because I requested that 40-day window. It's my legal right as a candidate, and he's a candidate as well. If he's allowed to go there within 45 days prior to the election, I'm legally allowed to go there as well. So they shut him down. But this is where you have to get out and start espousing policy. Start espousing your values. These are all of our faith-based values. This country is a country founded on the Judeo-Christian conservative foundation. We have to understand that. We can no longer accept anything different from that. I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. I really don't care. What I do care is what kind of a person are you? That's it. What are you in here? That's what's valuable to me. That's what I look at somebody coming into my house. If you're some corrupt individual, I don't care. If you're poor, if you're rich, I don't care. What's inside of your heart? And we've let some interesting people come into my home to polish them up and send them back out again. Because you don't judge somebody on that. What is in their heart? So when you're looking at the ballot box, you're looking at your elected official, does that person represent you? Does that person represent your values? I don't blanket, say, Democrats. Just like I know people want to blanket the immigration issue. My family, came from Guadalajara. My wife's family is from Jalisco. So when I hear Hispanics, my wife's family is all Hispanic, the Mena family. Mine's Sereno and Cervantes. So when I hear this, they're not horrible people. Trust me, they're really not. Yes, there are criminals that are coming across the border, like Donald Trump said. They want to commit murders, they want to do drugs, they want to do this. But you know what? There's the same amount of those in the white community. There's the same amount of those in the Sicilian community. There's the same amount of those in the Russian community. There's the same amount in every community out there. So it doesn't matter. The border security is number one. That's our border. If you lived in a neighborhood where people were coming into your yard constantly, you'd put up a wall, you'd put up a fence. Okay, so we have a right to do that. And that's why I said it's a border security issue. It's a national security issue. It's not an immigration issue. It's a national security issue. And we need to attend to the immigration policies. With that, I want to thank everybody online. I want to thank everybody here for coming out and listening to what I have to say.
Let's give more for you to have, everybody. I think you answered those questions pretty good, didn't you?
They were